Dylan Silbernagle. I tried to say it too fast. When you say it, things fast, crazy things happen. How are you, my man?
Especially when it's long like that. Gary, it feels like it's Friday. Is that when we do this show? I forget now.
It is. This is your Friday market update on a Tuesday, kind of like Taco Tuesday on a Friday, but how about something a little bit different?
It's going to be just as enjoyable.
Just as enjoyable. Well, we got lots to go through today. We're going to talk about some of the latest things in the news, what's going on in our local markets, and more importantly, Dylan, as we like to do, talk about really, boots on the street or client stories in a sense, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Get into the good stuff of what you're not hearing about in the news and the changes that we're seeing day to day.
Gotcha. Well, we've got a new fancy intro. We should roll it.
Let's do it.
That's fast. There you go. The Dylan and Gary show. All right.
Gary, how have you been this week? What's going on in your world?
This week is good. This week is this is a 5-day week crammed into 3. Because I had the pleasure of flying down to, I know I'm getting on a plane, a little weird. I'm still a little weirded out by this, getting on a plane and flying down to Orlando for Keller Williams family reunion, which if you know KW, that's their annual convention. Lots of things are launched. You're rubbing, in a sense, rubbing shoulders. I don't know if I want to rub shoulders, but you're rubbing shoulders with, the top agents in all of Keller Williams worldwide. So I'm looking forward to the education and seeing what's new in the industry and all sorts of good stuff over the next week.
Yeah, you always learn something new that you get to bring back that enhances your business, makes your client experience better. And I'm just looking for that one thing that's going to change my business this year. And of course, you learn a lot more than that. But if you can implement just one of them, you're doing great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know you've been down. I've been down to a handful of them, and of course it's virtual again this year. So if you're a realtor with KW, dive into it. If you're a realtor not with KW, this is my little segue. Reach out to Dylan or I. We can make sure that you get access to a lot of the live streams, which is fantastic. Lots of education, and you said it best. What can we bring home to help our clients experience and level up that experience, right?
100%. And this year, because I've got 2 little ones at home, I'm attending virtually. So that is an option for a lot of you. If you're looking to get some more into your business, if you're a realtor watching this, like Gary said, reach out to us and we can hook you up with some of that info.
That's right. So, Dylan, let's talk about the market. There's so many things going on, and we were so proud of ourselves because we did the TRREB market update last about a week and a half ago that they put out in the forecast.
Yeah.
That forecast needs to be rewritten.
It kind of does. I mean, in terms of the average price, we're already seeing that jump. January was up 28.6% over the previous January. So, the price growth, I think that's a hard one for anybody to predict, but they were anticipating, I believe it was a 12% growth year over year from 2021. And that would put us in that 1.2 range, and we're already at 1.24. So, it's a long year, it's going to average out over the year. We'll see what that looks like. But it looks like the 12% may be conservative unless things change. But they did talk a lot about, why they think so to go back to it, the other prediction is in terms of sales volume. And we're looking at 110,000 is their outlook for 2022, which is down from last year. And one of the reasons they're saying that it could slow down just a little bit is they're anticipating the interest rates increases holding that back. And I wonder if they made that same kind of prediction in regards to the rates going up in January when they didn't go up. And now we saw another big bump, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. Good thought too. And I had actually a high school friend who's living out west reach out to me to talk about, what do we think interest rates and how are interest rates going to affect the market? And you can see a little bit how, in a sense, on a very small scale, how it hadn't affected the market to pull it back a little bit. It let it go through with some crazy numbers, and I still think there's going to be a little bit of a soft landing that first interest adjustment. Do you
Mhm.
think?
Yeah,
Like,
and I think it'll be a good thing.
yeah,
I think I think it'll be a much needed uh, adjustment in terms of how this market is trending right now. Because we saw again in January, we saw sale prices that have no basis in reality. There's no way that somebody should be paying what they paid for a few of those. And then the reality is for the buyers that are paying that money, is they're making the right decision for them because one, they're getting into the market, and two, we know that this trend upwards is going to continue. So you need to get into it today, right? And I think one of the interesting things that I saw in the market last week, and I know a bunch of our agents in the office have seen the same thing, is there was a little influx of inventory, right? And so what happens when you get that little influx of inventory is, well, we stopped getting some of those extreme results where 18 people were bidding on one property, and that became a price that didn't really, make sense.
yeah.
But here we are now. There's 10 others to choose from, even five others in some neighborhoods to choose from, is makes a big difference.
And it's funny too, because you can really sense that buyers and agents aren't used to this new small, and let's be honest, it's a small influx of inventory at the moment, but we're not used to it. And you're getting calls and inquiries about, well, so and so has their offer date on the same date as yours, and what are you going to do? Well, let's peel the onion a bit here, Dylan. Like, that's normal. Right? In a
Yeah.
normal moving market, like, there's going to be offer days that coincide with each other and things like that. And us as realtors have to be, I think we got to do, quite frankly, call it what it is. We got to do a better job of setting that expectation for the sellers and buyers. And if you are a seller and buyer, that's the reality of it. As we get more inventory, the better it is for you as a buyer.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up because I did want to talk about that today as well. I love that what you hinted at is we got so used to, for a moment, being the only ones out there on an offer night. Like that there may actually only be, we are the only house on Tuesday night that you can go bid on. And that's just, again, that's not something that's normal, right? Having 10, 15 properties in a specific area that may be holding offers, that's more what used to be happening. That was normal even in hot markets.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy that we kind of got used to that there for a second. And then the strategy of it, right? For us realtors, what do we change? What do we change when we've got, when you're looking at that and it's the beginning? Do I switch my date? Do I go forward? Do I go backwards? Do I stay the same? Do I hold offers? Right? Like that's the great thing about this is I had this very discussion with one of our advanced coaching agents last week, and he's a master at analyzing the market. And we saw a few properties not get the results that we thought were going to happen. And we pivoted really quick. We're like, we're not even going to hold offers on this property, and that's what brought him the big result.
Well done.
So
I love that. I love having those conversations with sellers too, right?
yeah,
There was a moment where, we'll call it a moment, for about 2 months, maybe 3 months, where you were the only listing, or you were, as you said, the only one that having offer night on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And now we're
yeah,
seeing, multiple listings kind of coincide on the same day. And the question that I always love asking is, okay, well, how is the house and the marketing standing out from the crowd?
hmm
And as a seller, we got to be ahead of this game, right? To make sure that we are ahead of the curve.
yeah. And I think it takes evaluating it every day, right? When you see three new listings just like yours that a willing buyer would go look at, you need to take that into account. And if you're not monitoring that on a day by day, hour by hour basis, you're missing it, especially during this transition period, right? When we're getting a steady influx and there's just always that same amount of homes on the market again, then we're back to a norm. But when we're moving from only one home available to having 10 homes available, you really need to be on it. Otherwise, you might miss the boat.
Yeah, for sure. Now, are you seeing with the number of agents you're coaching and the ones that I'm talking with as well, the influx? Is there one segment of homes that's coming to market sooner than others? Like are you seeing more townhomes get listed, or is it detached, or is it a bit of
I've seen both.
yeah,
I've seen both. On our offer night the previous week for a townhome, we had 6 listings launch in a 48-hour window when there had only been like 2 the previous month. Right. So they are coming. And then you look at the detached market where those townhomes are going, same thing. They saw a couple of big prices and everybody's like, okay, we got to go. We got to get listed. And we know that this time of year, agents, we notice it more than anybody because we've been through 45, 60 days of drought where we had nothing to show our clients.
yeah.
Right. And so now when we see 4, we're like, oh my God, there's 4.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's really, really interesting. It's a good comment here from Danielle. Let me move this so we can all see it. Townhouses in East Gwillimbury coming up way more recently. These are things that we want to see. These are things and comments that if you're out there and you're talking with clients, with buyers and sellers, it's important to spread that information and share that information. And I know in one of the WhatsApp groups that you and I are a part of, Dylan, that the comment was, "Hey, is anybody else getting more listing phone calls at this moment? More than what they're used to, right?" Now, granted, this is always the time of year, Dylan, right? You know as well as anyone that we typically do get those calls.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody should be making their real estate plans at the start of the year. And it's time to talk, right? It's time to talk. And especially in a market right now where you see some of these prices coming up and then the looming interest rates potentially going up, some people are going to see that as a chance to be like, hey, now I should be selling. I should be taking advantage of this.
Yeah, for sure. And everyone does want to take advantage of this hot market. And speaking of hot market, so as you know, I was doing or I am doing a CMA for a client right now down in the Markham area, and it's in more of the higher end range. But I was curious, as one is when you're looking at the market and the numbers, and the medium price for detached homes in November through to January in Markham, which is a big city in New York. Yeah. It's wide, it's big, it's got, very high end homes, but also has your regular detached homes. Well, those regular detached homes went up almost $200,000 in those 2 months. It's about 10%.
Yeah.
Right. And in part of that too, Dylan, if I look back, this is the crazy thing. If I look back, if in November there was 217 active detached homes in the month of November in Markham, and in January it was down by more than half to 96. So that's going to drive that pricing up. Remember, I don't care what you call it. It's still an inventory supply movement and move here. And it's always going to kind of dictate what happens in the market.
And you can see that with TRREB overall announcing 15.5% decrease in new listing activity in January, right? Down 15% in comparison. So
yeah, they are down year over year. And I know I was doing some numbers for our brokerage. And if you're curious, our numbers were down too, but they weren't down as much as 15%. We were down, I think it was about 11.5 to 12%. So we're seeing it down as well. But the good news is for KW and our agents and clients, our numbers aren't nearly as down as the market average, which is a good thing.
Yeah, we're outperforming the market in that segment for sure.
Yeah.
And it was great to see in that report.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to pivot us too abruptly, but I've had enough of the numbers for one day there.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
There was something that you and I wanted to talk about, still talking about investors and looking at where the market's going to go. And we always like, when CMHC talks, we like to listen. And there was a recent article that we were looking at where they were saying, they're being very conscious of hurting what they call the mom and pop investors. They don't want to make policy changes that are going to hurt kind of these individual investors that are taking some of the equity from their home and looking at investing in real estate. And I thought that was a very important thing for people to know about in general, especially when we look at policy changes from the government in the past, how sometimes they've made things which they thought they were trying to help the market, but they ended up hurting the market and hurting people in the process. And so seeing something like that with that kind of consideration, I thought that was a great article to read and a great policy intention.
Yeah, it really is. And I was trying to share it here, but it's with the Globe and Mail. I'll put the link up here momentarily. And it's really, really interesting too, because here we are. It's funny because we always get this mindset, oh, investors are driving up the prices. Well, I'll tell you what, Dylan, I don't know what investors you work with, but my investors don't drive up prices because they buy for the dollar amount. Right.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and sorry, forgive me if you just mentioned this, but they do represent about 20% of the market, which,
Yeah.
which is a big piece because we need, as a society, we need that 20% of the market to be created into rental inventory, right? Because we know that there is such a high demand for rentals. And when you or I, as an investor, get to go buy, whether it's a townhouse or a home, and add a second suite to it, we're adding to that inventory of rental units, which, as we all know, is way below what we need it to be. So people will say, well, investors are stealing, in a sense, homes away from potential buyers. Well, on the flip side is we need these homes for renters because there's a big segment of renters that will always be renters.
Yes.
Right. They have no intention of owning home, and that's okay. Whether they're, high income earners or not, that's okay. We have, and I've rented, I'm sure you have in the past, big 4-bedroom homes that you would think, why is this person not buying? But in their world, they'd much rather rent or lease a big 4-bedroom home or what have you. And it's such almost like a breath of fresh air, which is strange, coming from the government saying, okay, how can we encourage this to keep moving forward?
Yeah, exactly. And be mindful of it, right? So that they don't make a policy change that has kind of wide sweeping ramifications. And I like what you mentioned there. And I would say there's another side to it too. With the way prices have gone up, we need those rental units for the people that, yeah, they can afford the monthly rent, but they can't get to the down payment because the prices have gone up so high, right? And so as that tends to be the case, these investors that are buying and putting rental units back into the market, that's a difference maker, right? That is going to help a segment of our population that doesn't have the ability to necessarily get into home ownership right now, but still needs housing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's important that, all levels of government get on board with different initiatives and encouraging investors to, look locally and so forth and create more rental supply. And I know for many of my investors that I've worked with in the past, we couldn't find, it had nothing to do with the pricing of the market. We couldn't find what we wanted. Maybe it was a 2-unit home or a 3-unit home. So they went and bought a single detached home and added a second suite to it. So they're actually adding 2 units to the rental pool, if you will, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other point to note here as well is that they are still being mindful of it. Like there are talks about, hey, do we raise the down payment standard for these second dwelling investors, for investors to buy into the market? Do we try and slow it down just a little bit by raising the amount of money that they have to put down? And that's how we'll make sure, hey, we're not hurting anybody. We're just slowing that side down a little bit, right? Because we are at kind of an all-time high for the investors segment of the market at 20%. That's much higher than it's ever been in history, really, right?
Yeah, and I have a couple of theories behind that. and and part of that is, and if you want to get into it, excuse me, is, it's been said over and over and over again, Dylan, 90% of the millionaires made their wealth through real estate.
Mm-hmm.
So if a lot of these investors are already holding real estate, perhaps they have created some wealth that they want to redeploy into other properties, for instance. And I think that has there's some truth to that. It might not be the entire part of the story, but there is some truth to that.
Yeah. And I think it's part of that conversation that we've been having with people for a while now, saying, yeah, I'd be happy to move and cash in on the price that I've got, but where do I go? Right. So, okay, I can't maybe afford to buy back into the prime neighborhood that I'm in now, that if it's the next step up, but I'm acknowledging I've got all this equity in my home and I'm not doing anything with it to make money. I'm not creating any wealth by having my equity in my home just sit there. So now's the opportunity where, you know what, I'm not going to go buy a trophy home somewhere. I'm going to go buy an investment property because that's what's going to make the difference for my family. Not having the bigger house, but having the wealth building kind of avenue to go down and buy that secondary property.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So over the last week or so, I had a handful of people reach out and ask me a couple of questions. I'm going to throw them at you. This is totally unscripted, and that's what we like.
I was going to say.
Yeah. Yeah. And so obviously we've seen the prices move over the last several months, somewhat significantly. And if you're thinking of selling, Dylan, this year, do you do it now? Or do you wait until like the classic spring market? What are you telling your clients when they ask you that question?
Yeah, in general, I would still say that sooner is better because we don't know what this market's going to bring. The classic response of if I had a crystal ball, I'd be a millionaire already, right? But we don't, and we know that right now the market conditions are good. If you're waiting, and this is the same advice I pretty much give every year, is if you're waiting till, May, June, or April and May, you're already competing with so much more inventory. If I'm having a challenge finding them what they want to purchase because we don't have enough inventory, then I'll say, you can roll the dice there. If we wait a little bit longer to list, you're going to find some more inventory to choose from. So we'll have a better experience on what you're purchasing. But in terms of, capitalizing on what this market could bring, now's kind of the time. We just sold a little bungalow over on Main Street, Newmarket, and we had that thing listed in 3 days because we saw a couple of great sales go. And we're like, we're never going to do this again. This is like the best time to take advantage of this and do it securely, where I'm getting that sale, I'm pulling out that equity that I had from the house. Now I've got those proceeds and I can set myself up for the retirement that I want.
Yeah.
Right. So that tends to be how I go. I mean, I could easily make an argument that will prices be up higher by the time the fall comes around? Absolutely. There's a good chance that that's what's going to be what happens. But if you're making a purchase in this market as well, I'd rather lock in at the interest rates where they are now and the price where they are now, as opposed to worrying about, could I get a little bit more money on my fall home sale?
Yeah, for sure. And it's very similar to the flip side of that conversation is, I'm a buyer. Do I wait for that inventory to come? What we have seen, and we kind of talked a little bit about the Markham. If you waited, you're now paying, on average 10% more, for instance. Yeah. Right. So, it is kind of that catch-22, the chicken and the egg whole scenario. Mm-hmm. If you have an opportunity, to get into the market as a buyer, mm-hmm. we've said, I think we said it last week, when in doubt, zoom out, right? So the numbers are always, relative, and you're just not focusing in on today's number. And if you're planning on buying a home and being there for 5, 10, 15 years or more, then now is always a good time to buy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always a good time to buy the right house, but it's always the wrong time to buy the wrong house, right? So if you make the right plan, every decision is going to be great. And I've got a lot more stories of people that decided to wait that it's now harder for than the people that jumped in and regretted jumping in. I can't think of one of those stories where people took advantage. Everybody that jumped in and took action as soon as they were able to, looking back, they're like, that's the best thing I could have ever done. I wouldn't be able to afford my house today at the price that it's at. Like, now is the best time, provided everything else in your life still makes sense. And that's obviously a big part of the conversation, is what else is going on in your life besides the real estate move.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot more questions that, of course, Dylan and I would ask any one of our buyers or sellers, when should I buy? When should I sell? It does come down to some personal choices and things like that. And it's important to make sure you're having those conversations with your realtor or with your clients, depending on who you are watching this. Okay, Dylan, what are you telling people about interest rates? So let's land on this for a couple of minutes, and then we'll kind of sign off. What are you telling people about the interest rates and how to watch them and what's going on at the moment?
Yeah, I'd say one of the questions that it's not so much a question. I get a lot of the fear that comes up in conversation about, well, the interest rates are going to go up, right? And what does that mean for how much my monthly expenses are for my housing? And and the other side of it is that going to help me purchase a home? Is that going to bring down the prices enough, right? And one of the big answers on that side is, I think we talked about this in one of our first episodes, is we need, if the bank goes up at a quarter a point a raise, and that's typically what they do. I think there's talk of maybe this next one they might go half a point because they missed January, but in general they typically go that half a point up. We need six more increases just to get back to where we were before the pandemic happened, right? So if you want to wait out six increases, I think again, if you're trying to time the market, it's going to make more sense for you to buy now. One, because your 5-year rate, if you want to lock in at that, is going to be lower than when the rates go up, and your price today is going to be lower than what it is, those five increases from now, even if it does soften the market, because we have so much buyer demand still in the wings waiting to come into the market.
That's such a great point. I remember I did some math the last time we kind of went through a market like this, and people were so excited because the market had dropped in a sense. I forget, it dropped about 7%, so maybe a little bit more. And they were so excited at that purchase price, yet they paid a higher interest rate.
Yeah.
And I did the math for them in a sense. Over 25 years of the amortization of that mortgage, they were paying so much more for that home. Yeah. So much, like it was significant. It wasn't like $10,000 that for over 25 years, who cares, right? Over $10,000, but it was literally like $75,000 to $100,000 more in interest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, I mean, the interest is the worst part of looking at our mortgages, and especially even looking at what you've got your mortgage payment. Look at what you pay off after 1 year of being in the house, right? Yeah. Like you're lucky if it's like a third that went towards the principal and the other 2/3 of it are interest.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Good stuff. We've gone over about 30 minutes here. That's where we kind of like to keep these streams to. And if you kind of picked up on it from the beginning, we've got a big convention that we're a part of this week. So there won't be a live stream this Friday, but come next week, we'll have some really good information and some insight to share about our market, about the industry. And again, boots on the ground. That's the most important thing about these videos, Dylan.
Yeah, absolutely. I love meeting with you every week to talk about it, because it's great that we're sharing this information, but also hearing our own experiences and the conversations that we're having. It's just such a beneficial thing to all. So yeah, Gary, I'm looking forward to, I'm going to miss you this Friday, buddy, but I'm looking forward to next week.
Yeah. Don't jump on at 1:00 expecting me to be on the other side. Yeah. And all good. All right, my friends, everyone have a wonderful week. Stay warm, and we look forward to seeing you on the next show. Bye for now.
Bye for now, guys.